I stood on my porch watching 3 grizzly bears circle my property while my son-in-law's parents screamed from their car. The security cameras captured everything. This wasn't an accident. I'd planned it down to the last detail. But to understand why I did it, you need to know how a simple phone call 2 weeks earlier turned my dream retirement into a war I never wanted to fight. The keys were cold against my palm. I stood in Rebecca Marsh's real estate office in Kalispell, watching her staple documents together while spring wind pushed clouds across the Montana sky outside her window. "Congratulations, Mr. Brennan!" Rebecca's smile was the kind real estate agents practiced in mirrors. "You're officially a property owner in Flathead County." The cashier's check had cleared that morning, $215,000. 38 years of double shifts at the postal distribution center in Billings. 38 years of skipped vacations and sandwiches packed in wax paper. Everything I'd saved, converted into 900 square feet of timber and silence, 18 miles from the nearest neighbor. "Thank you." I shook her hand and put the keys in my jacket pocket. Before we continue, please subscribe to Elder Vengeance and write in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us share these stories of justice and resilience. The drive took me east on Highway 2, then north onto roads that narrowed with each turn. Pavement became gravel. Gravel became packed dirt with potholes deep enough to scrape my truck's undercarriage. My phone signal dropped from 3 bars to 1, then disappeared completely. I stopped at a general store with faded Coca-Cola signs in the window. Inside smelled like coffee and sawdust. I bought supplies. Coffee, eggs, bread, butter. The clerk was maybe 60, weathered face, flannel shirt. "Just passing through?" she asked. "Living?" She nodded like I'd said something that made sense and bagged my groceries in paper. The final 3 miles climbed through pine forest so dense the afternoon sun barely broke through the canopy. When the cabin appeared in its clearing, I pulled over and shut off the engine. A moose stood 50 yards from the porch. Massive, dark brown, completely unbothered by my truck. It raised its head slowly, studied me with black eyes that reflected nothing, then lowered its head to drink from a creek running through the property. The water made a sound like whispers over the rocks. I sat there for 10 minutes. No traffic noise, no voices bleeding through apartment walls. No schedules, just wind moving through pine branches and that water sound. The cabin matched the photos exactly. Weathered logs the color of honey, green metal roof, stone chimney with moss growing on the north side. Small, yes, but mine. The air smelled like pine sap and old wood smoke and something else I couldn't name. Peace, maybe. One main room with a kitchenette along the east wall, a bedroom barely large enough for a queen bed, a bathroom with a shower stall I'd have to enter sideways. The floor was pine plank, scarred and worn smooth by previous owners. Perfect. I unloaded my truck slowly, methodically. Tools on the pegboard above the workbench. Hammer, level, handsaw, each in its designated place. Books stacked on the shelf by category. History, engineering manuals, 3 novels I'd meant to read for a decade. Coffee maker positioned on the counter where morning light would hit it first through the east window. By the time I finished arranging everything, the sun was setting behind the mountains. I made coffee even though it was too late in the day. I didn't care about sleep schedules anymore. I carried the mug to the porch and sat in the rocking chair I'd bought specifically for this moment. The moose had moved deeper into the clearing, grazing on something low to the ground. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals I couldn't see. The temperature was dropping. I could feel it against my face. I pulled out my phone. 1 bar of signal. Enough. Jennifer answered on the second ring. "Dad, are you there? Did you close?" "Signed the papers this morning. I'm sitting on my porch right now watching a moose eat whatever moose eat. I'm so proud of you. 38 years you worked for this. You earned every single moment of peace up there." I took a sip of coffee. It was already going lukewarm in the mountain air. 38 years I dreamed about mornings where I'd drink coffee and watch wildlife instead of sorting mail in a warehouse that smelled like diesel exhaust. "You deserve it, Dad. You really do." She paused, and something in that silence felt wrong. Trevor's been stressed lately with his promotion. Sometimes I forget what peaceful even looks like anymore. The way she said it made me set down my coffee mug on the porch railing. Everything okay with you two? Oh, fine. You know how corporate management is. Deadlines, politics, all that. She laughed, but it sounded thin, like paper stretched too tight. When can I come visit? I want to see this place. Anytime, honey. You know that. You know that. We talked for another 15 minutes. Her fourth grade class, her plans for a vegetable garden, safe topics that required no real answers. When we hung up, I sat watching the sun paint the mountains orange and purple and finally deep blue. The coffee had gone cold, but I drank the rest anyway. The phone rang at 9:30. My parents lost their place. Trevor didn't bother with hello or how are you. His voice had that flat business tone, the one he used when he'd already made a decision and wasn't interested in discussion. They're moving in with you for a couple months until they find something permanent. My hand tightened on the armrest of the rocking chair. The wood creaked. Wait, what? Trevor, I just bought this place yesterday. It's barely. For a couple months, maybe 3. I'll text you their arrival time, Friday morning around 10. Trevor, wait. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the clearing where the moose had been. It had moved on, disappeared into the tree line. Smart animal. I didn't sleep that night. Tried for maybe an hour, then gave up and sat at the kitchen table with the lights off watching moonlight move across the clearing through the window. Shadows shifted. Trees became dark shapes against darker sky. Trevor's words kept replaying in my head. Not a request, not even a conversation. My parents are moving in. Deal with it. I'd spent 38 years being the reasonable one, the peacemaker, the man who swallowed inconvenience to keep family harmony intact. My ex-wife Susan used to say I was too accommodating, that I let people walk over me because I hated conflict. Maybe she was right. But this wasn't accommodation. This was someone taking what I'd worked 4 decades to earn. I made coffee at dawn and pulled out my old engineering notebook. Grid paper, the kind I'd used for 3 decades solving logistics problems at the distribution center. I started writing, not emotions, questions, facts, calculations arranged in columns. Why now? Why this urgency? Why couldn't Gerald and Diana find their own place in Denver where they'd lived for 20 years? The numbers didn't add up. The timeline felt wrong. I called Jennifer around 9 in the morning, kept my voice casual, light. Hey, honey, quick question. Trevor mentioned his parents lost their place? Oh, yeah. Her voice changed, became uncomfortable. It's been really stressful for him lately. They got behind on rent, I guess. A few months. Behind on rent? I pressed gently, carefully. What happened? Gerald always seemed financially stable. Jennifer hesitated. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Dad, I probably shouldn't say anything. Trevor would be upset if he knew I told you. Honey, they're supposedly moving into my cabin on Friday. I think I deserve to know the situation. She took a breath. Long, slow, like she was preparing herself. Gerald was gambling online. Poker sites, those apps where you play against other people for real money. He lost a lot of money over about 8 months. Diana didn't know until the eviction notice came in the mail. The coffee in my hand had gone cold. I set it down on the table. How much money? Jennifer's voice dropped to almost a whisper, like someone might overhear even though she was alone. $53,000. The number settled into my chest. Heavy. Real. 53,000. Trevor's been trying to help them, you know? He's so worried. That's why he's been stressed at work, distracted at home. I think he even took out some kind of loan or something to help cover part of it. A loan. The words hung there. What kind of loan? I don't know exactly. He handles all our finances. Something about the house equity, maybe? I didn't really understand when he explained it. Financial stuff makes my head hurt. After we hung up, I sat staring at my notebook. The pattern was forming like a foundation crack spreading across concrete. Gerald gambles away $53,000, gets evicted. Trevor tries to cover some of it with a loan against his own house. Now they're both in financial trouble. And suddenly, Trevor needs my cabin, not for his parents' temporary housing, for leverage, for value, for a way out of a hole he'd dug trying to save his father from consequences. This wasn't about family helping family. This was about desperation masked as obligation. And desperate people made dangerous decisions, rationalized things they'd never consider otherwise. I looked around my cabin, 900 square feet of peace I'd saved decades to buy. The first thing in my entire adult life that was truly mine, not shared, not compromised, not sacrificed to keep everyone else comfortable. Not this time. I opened my laptop and started searching. Montana wildlife management, bear behavior patterns, grizzly territories, predator activity in Flathead County. I wasn't going to be the victim here. I wasn't going to hand over what I'd earned because Trevor was too proud to admit his father's gambling had created a financial crisis that wasn't my responsibility to solve. If Trevor wanted to play games with my retirement, I'd teach him a lesson about consequences, about assumptions, about what happens when you mistake someone's patience for weakness. Outside my window, the sun climbed higher over the mountains. The clearing was empty now, just grass and wildflowers moving in the breeze. But I knew the wildlife would return. They always did. Wednesday morning, I drove to the Glacier National Park Ranger Station, 25 minutes west of my cabin on Highway 2. The building was modern, all glass and timber designed to blend with the landscape. Inside, educational displays showed grizzly bears mid-roar, mountain lions crouched on rocks, wolf packs moving through snow. A ranger stood behind the information desk, maybe 45, with the weathered face of someone who spent more time outdoors than in. He looked up from paperwork. Just moved here from Billings. I kept my tone casual, friendly. Bought a place off County Road 19. Want to be smart about wildlife safety? Smart thinking. He stood and moved to a wall map covered in colored pins. Red for bear sightings, blue for mountain lions, yellow for wolves. We've got healthy grizzly populations in this area. They're usually shy of humans, but food attracts them from miles away. How far can they smell food? 2 miles, maybe more, depending on wind conditions and what the food source is. He tapped the map near where my property would be. You planning to hunt up there? No hunting. Just want to understand what I'm dealing with. Keep your property clean. Don't leave garbage out overnight. No food scraps outside, not even composting, unless it's in a bear-proof container. He handed me a pamphlet with a grizzly bear photo on the cover. Unless you want visitors showing up for dinner. I took careful notes in my engineering notebook. Wind patterns, bear territories, seasonal behavior patterns, migration routes. I thanked him warmly, mentioned again I was new to Montana and still learning the rules. Every word calculated to sound cautious and naive, just another retired man trying to avoid mistakes. That afternoon, I found an outdoor supply store in Kalispell. Taxidermy covered the walls, elk and deer with glass eyes that followed you. Racks of hunting gear, camouflage clothing, ammunition behind the counter in locked cases. The camera section sat between security systems and trail monitoring equipment, looking for motion sensor cameras. I told the clerk, a younger man with a beard and a Patagonia vest. Want to monitor wildlife around my property? See what's moving through at night. He showed me 2 models. Both had night vision, cellular connectivity, weatherproof housing rated for Montana winters. These'll do you right. Lots of folks keep an eye on their land this way. Battery life is about 6 months with normal use. I'll take 2. $380 cash. I paid without hesitation. Back at the cabin, I installed them methodically. One covering the driveway approach, positioned to capture vehicles arriving. One angled toward the front porch and the clearing beyond, wide lens to catch maximum area. I tested the motion sensors, checked signal strength on my phone, adjusted angles until the coverage was perfect. 40 years of solving structural and logistics problems made me appreciate precision. Hide them enough to be unobtrusive among the trees. Position them for optimal capture without obvious placement. Test, adjust, verify. Same process I'd used inspecting mail sorting systems. Both cameras connected to my phone through an app. 1 bar of service. Weak, but functional enough for alerts and video retrieval. Thursday morning, I drove to a butcher shop on a side street in Kalispell. The kind of place that served ranchers and restaurants, not tourists. A bell rang when I opened the door. The air smelled like blood and sawdust and refrigeration. Need 25 pounds of scraps, I said. Organ meat, fat trimmings, whatever you've got. For dogs. The butcher was maybe 60, white apron stained from years of work. He didn't blink at the request. You got it. Give me 10 minutes. $52 for meat wrapped in white butcher paper, tied with twine. I loaded it into coolers I'd brought specifically for this purpose. The smell was immediate and powerful. Blood, fat, raw flesh. Primal. The kind of smell that traveled on wind currents for miles. Thursday afternoon, I stood in the clearing behind my cabin with the coolers open beside me. Wind came from the west, steady and cold. I checked it the old way, wetting my finger and holding it up like my father taught me 50 years ago. Perfect conditions. I walked 40 yards from the cabin, upwind from the building. Then I placed the meat in 4 separate piles, spreading them in a rough semicircle to maximize scent dispersion across the clearing. Not random placement. Calculated. Close enough to draw predators to the immediate area, far enough that they'd focus on the piles themselves, not the building structure. I wasn't trying to endanger anyone. I was trying to educate them about consequences, about making assumptions, about taking things that didn't belong to them without understanding the environment they were entering. Inside the cabin, I locked windows, turned off unnecessary power to minimize my utility footprint, set the thermostat to minimal heat. Protecting my investment while setting my trap, I took one last look at the space I'd inhabited for less than a week, the tools on their pegboard, the coffee maker positioned for morning light. Then I left without hesitation. The drive back to Billings took 6 hours through mountain passes and high plains. I arrived at my old rental house just after dark. The place still smelled like the life I'd left behind. Familiar. Comfortable. Temporary. I unpacked my laptop, charged my phone, made coffee even though it was late. Then I waited. Friday morning at 10:32, a silver SUV appeared on my phone screen. I was sitting in my old living room in Billings, laptop open on the coffee table, phone propped against a stack of books where I could watch the camera feeds. Gerald and Diana emerged from the vehicle, looking around with expressions I recognized even on the small display. Displeasure. Judgment. The way people looked at something they'd expected to be better. The camera microphone picked up their voices clearly. The audio quality was better than I'd anticipated. This is it? Diana's voice was sharp, dismissive. It smells like a forest out here. At least it's free housing. Gerald walked toward the cabin door, keys in his hand that Trevor must have had made somehow. We'll stay a couple months. Let Trevor figure out the next step while we regroup. I don't see why we had to come all the way to Montana. Diana stopped at the porch steps, arms crossed. We could have stayed with your sister in Phoenix, or... She froze mid-sentence. Gerald! Her voice changed completely. Gerald! 2 shapes emerged from the northwest tree line. Massive, dark brown, moving with deliberate purpose toward the meat piles I'd placed 40 yards from the cabin. Grizzly bears! Adult bears, maybe 600 pounds each. A third bear, smaller but still substantial, appeared behind them. Probably last year's cub, not quite independent, but learning. Gerald's face went white even from the camera angle. Get in the car! Get in the car now! They ran. Diana stumbled on the gravel driveway, caught herself with both hands against the SUV's hood. Gerald yanked the driver's door open so hard it bounced back and nearly hit him. Diana scrambled into the passenger side, not bothering to close her door properly. The engine started with a roar. Gravel sprayed in all directions as Gerald reversed wildly, nearly hitting a pine tree on the south side of the clearing. Then he accelerated forward down the driveway, fishtailing on the dirt road, Diana's door finally slamming shut from momentum. The bears, completely unbothered by the commotion, continued toward the meat. The largest one reached the first pile and began eating with methodical efficiency. The others joined, spacing themselves out across the 4 piles. Natural behavior. No aggression. Just hungry animals doing what evolution designed them to do. I closed the laptop and picked up my coffee, took a slow sip. It had gone lukewarm while I watched. 23 minutes later, my phone rang, Trevor's name on the screen. What did you do? His voice was pure fury, loud enough I had to hold the phone away from my ear. My parents nearly got killed by bears. What the hell did you do? I didn't do anything. I kept my voice calm, measured. I warned you, this property is in grizzly country. Bears live here, Trevor. This is their home. They were here long before I bought the place. You set this up, you baited those animals, you put meat out to attract them. Trevor, I live in wilderness. Wildlife exists. It's Montana, not suburban Denver. Maybe you should have asked before assuming you could use my property without my permission. You're insane. You could have gotten them killed. I'm going to report this. You're going to what? I interrupted. Sue me because grizzlies exist on my land? Call the authorities and tell them wildlife appeared on wilderness property? Good luck with that conversation. This isn't over. No, I said quietly. It's just beginning. I pressed end call, set the phone down on the table deliberately, returned to my laptop and opened the footage again. The three bears finished the meat methodically over the course of 18 minutes, then disappeared back into the forest the same way they'd come. Natural behavior documented completely. No aggression toward the structure. No property damage. No attempt to approach the building. Just wild animals responding to available food sources in their territory. I saved the video file with a clear timestamp and label. Evidence, natural wildlife activity, April 12, 2024. Then, I saved a backup copy to an external drive. Outside my Billings window, the afternoon sky was clearing after morning clouds. Somewhere up in those mountains, my cabin waited, empty, protected, mine. Gerald and Diana had learned an important lesson today. Some places aren't meant for everyone. Some spaces have rules you can't negotiate or ignore. Nature doesn't care about your convenience or your financial problems. Trevor wanted to play power games with my retirement. He'd just discovered I understood strategy better than he'd imagined. I poured another cup of coffee and started planning my next move. Not revenge, just boundaries. Clear, unmistakable boundaries that couldn't be misunderstood or talked around. Because Trevor was right about one thing. This wasn't over. 3 days passed before the phone calls started. First was my cousin Linda, someone I hadn't spoken to in 4 years. Maybe longer. Howard, it's Linda. I heard you've been having some difficulties up in Montana. Difficulties? I set down the sandwich I'd been eating. From whom? Trevor called me yesterday. He's worried about you. Said you're isolated in the mountains, acting strangely, not making good decisions. The strategy revealed itself immediately, crystal clear. He was building a narrative, planting seeds with every family member he could reach, one conversation at a time. I retired to Montana like I'd been planning for years. That's not strange. That's following through on something I've talked about since before I retired. He said there was an incident with wild animals, that you refused to help his parents when they were in danger, that you just let them face bears alone. That's an interesting version of events. I kept my voice neutral. Thanks for checking on me, Linda. I appreciate the concern. I ended the call and stared at my phone on the kitchen table. 2 hours later, another call. Former colleague from the Postal Service, guy named Ron, I'd worked with for maybe 15 years. Same script, different voice. Trevor had reached out, expressing concern about Howard's mental state, the isolation, the incident with the bears, the erratic behavior. The third call came that evening. Jennifer, not crying this time, angry. You embarrassed them, Dad, in front of wild bears, Diana said. She thought she was going to die. What were you thinking? I offered to discuss housing options in town before they came. They rejected that. Trevor decided they'd stay at my cabin without asking me. They're family. Trevor's parents. They needed help and you put them in danger. And this is my home. My retirement. My one place of peace, which I bought with money I saved for 38 years while everyone else took vacations and bought new cars. Trevor was right. You've changed. You've become someone I don't even recognize anymore. The words landed hard. I felt something crack in my chest, but I kept my voice quiet, controlled. Maybe I have changed. Or maybe everyone else has been changing for years, and I'm just finally noticing. The line went dead. She'd hung up on me. I sat at my kitchen table in the rental house, watching darkness settle over Billings through the window. 3 calls in one evening. all saying the same thing with slight variations. Howard Brennan is unstable, dangerous, unreasonable, making poor decisions. The isolation I'd sought for peace was being weaponized, turned into evidence of mental decline or instability. Trevor wasn't trying to take the cabin anymore. Not directly. He was trying to destroy my credibility first. Make me seem incompetent. Turn the family against me so no one would believe my version of events when the time came. Classic strategy. I'd seen it in workplace conflicts for decades. Isolate the target, control the narrative, strike when they're defenseless and no one will defend them. I opened my laptop and began researching. Elder law, asset protection, conservatorship proceedings in Montana. The more I read, the colder I felt. If Trevor could convince enough people I was incompetent, he could petition for conservatorship, take control of my finances, my property, my decisions, my life. The legal process would freeze everything while courts decided whether a 70-year-old man living alone in the mountains was capable of managing his own affairs. At 11 that night, I sent an email to a law firm in Kalispell I'd found with good reviews. Careful words, factual language, no emotion bleeding through the sentences. I needed legal advice regarding family pressure over property ownership, potential claims against competency, asset protection strategies. I included the basics: my age, property value, family situation, 3 specific questions about elder law and estate planning in Montana. Then I poured myself bourbon, 1 glass, 2 fingers, no ice. I sat in the dark living room and drank it slowly. Somewhere down in Denver, Trevor was planning his next move, making more phone calls, building his case. I intended to be several steps ahead when he finally made it. The attorney responded at 7 the next morning. David Sheffield could meet Wednesday afternoon at his office in Kalispell. Fee structure: $325 per hour. Minimum 2-hour consultation for initial intake. I confirmed immediately. For the next 4 days, I organized documentation. Everything labeled, dated, cross-referenced in a system that made sense. Property deed in one folder. Purchase documents in another. Family tree diagram showing relationships, ages, connections. Written timeline of events starting with Trevor's first phone call on April 10th. Transcripts of key phone conversations reconstructed from my detailed notes taken immediately after each call. By Wednesday morning, I had a leather portfolio packed with evidence as solid as any foundation I'd ever inspected at the distribution center. Sheffield's office occupied the 2nd floor of a professional building on Main Street in Kalispell. The waiting room had leather chairs and magazines nobody read. He was maybe 50, sharp-eyed, with the direct manner of someone who didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Mr. Brennan." He shook my hand firmly. "Come in." I presented my documentation in sequence: property papers first, family diagram second, timeline third, evidence last. Each document handed across the desk at the appropriate moment. Nothing rushed, nothing out of order. Sheffield took notes in a yellow legal pad, asked clarifying questions. I had answers prepared for each one. After 30 minutes, he set down his pen and leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Brennan, this is the most organized intake I've seen in 15 years practicing law. You've documented everything perfectly: dates, times, witnesses, financial details. This is exceptional work. 38 years in postal logistics. Documentation prevents disputes. Proof matters more than memory. In this case, it's going to protect you significantly." He tapped the timeline. "Here's my assessment. Your son-in-law is attempting to establish grounds for claiming you're incompetent to manage your affairs. The smear campaign, the stories about dangerous behavior, the phone calls to family members, these are preliminaries to a potential conservatorship claim." Conservatorship. Taking away my legal rights. It's a tactic used more often than people realize. Not always successful, but it can tie up your assets in court for 6 to 18 months while they argue you can't manage your affairs properly. The solution is to prove conclusively that you are managing your affairs competently and have professional oversight, which is exactly what we're doing right now. What's the next step? Revocable living trust with me as independent trustee. I'll be frank about costs. It'll run about $2,600 in legal fees, but it makes you essentially untouchable from a legal perspective. The trust owns the property, not you personally. Family pressure becomes legally meaningless because they're not challenging your competency. They're challenging a legal entity I control. Do it. How soon can we have it ready? 2 weeks. I'll draft the documents, you'll review and sign, we'll record everything properly with the county. After that, your property is protected under trust law. I also need a medical evaluation, I said. Something comprehensive that proves my competency beyond question. Smart thinking. Sheffield wrote something on his notepad. I can refer you to Dr. Patricia Lynn. She does evaluations for legal purposes regularly. Very thorough, very professional. Courts trust her assessments. The appointment with Dr. Lynn was scheduled for the following Monday at her clinic on the north side of Kalispell. Comprehensive cognitive testing, memory recall exercises, problem-solving assessments, blood work, physical examination. The whole process took 3 hours. She was thorough and professional. Asked questions about my daily life, my routines, my decision-making processes, tested my ability to manage finances, understand contracts, make independent choices. When finished, she typed a letter on clinic letterhead while I waited. Mr. Howard Brennan is mentally competent, physically healthy, and fully capable of managing his own affairs and making independent decisions regarding his property and finances. Patient is alert, oriented to person, place, and time, and cognitively intact with no deficits noted. Memory function is excellent for age. No signs of dementia, confusion, diminished capacity, or impairment in judgment. Patient demonstrates clear understanding of complex financial and legal concepts. I paid $280 for the evaluation and left with 3 copies of everything. Original for Sheffield, 1 for my records, 1 for backup. That evening I sat at my table in Billings, documents spread before me in organized piles. Attorney notes on the left. Medical evaluation in the center. Property records on the right. Everything documented, verified, legally sound. Trevor thought he was cornering me. Thought he was building a case that would force me to surrender control. He had no idea I was building walls he couldn't breach. My phone buzzed on the table. Email from Sheffield. Trust documents ready for review Friday at 2 p.m. Come prepared to sign. Bring 2 forms of ID and cashier's check for filing fees. I replied immediately. I'll be there. I gathered the documents back into their folders, labeled each one, filed them in order. Then I made coffee and sat by the window watching streetlights come on across the neighborhood. Somewhere in Denver, Trevor was making phone calls, building his narrative, convincing people I was incompetent. He could make all the phone calls he wanted. I had something better than stories. I had proof. I was reviewing public records online, checking property liens on my cabin as a routine precaution when I decided to search Jennifer and Trevor's address in Denver. Professional habit. I'd spent 40 years verifying information, double-checking details that seemed off. The mortgage history loaded slowly on my old laptop. Then I saw it. Home equity line of credit, $42,000. Dated 7 months ago, October of last year. Single signature authorization, Trevor's name only, not Jennifer's. I stared at the screen for a long time. The room was quiet except for the laptop fan humming. My hands went numb. I had to set down my coffee mug before I dropped it. I printed the documents on my old inkjet printer, added them to my folder in a new section labeled Financial Discoveries, called Sheffield immediately. David, I found something. My daughter's house has a $42,000 HELOC that she doesn't know about, taken out by her husband alone 7 months ago. Sheffield was quiet for a moment. Colorado allows single-spouse HELOCs under certain conditions if the house is titled correctly, but hiding it from a spouse? That's a different matter entirely. Has she discovered it yet? No. I'm not sure when or if I should tell her. That's not a legal question, Howard. That's a family question. But from a legal perspective, this explains his motivation clearly. He's likely using your cabin scheme to cover existing debts he can't tell his wife about. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and spread everything out across the surface. All the documents, all the evidence, all the pieces. The pattern was complete now, crystal clear. Gerald's $53,000 in gambling debts led to Trevor's $42,000 HELOC to cover part of it, which led to financial pressure Trevor couldn't admit to Jennifer, which led to the scheme to acquire my cabin and eventually liquidate it for cash to solve problems he'd created. Everything connected. Every decision led to the next one. I pulled out my phone and texted Jennifer. Honey, we need to talk. Can you come to the cabin this weekend? Just you, not Trevor, it's important. Her response came 10 minutes later. Is everything okay? You're worrying me now. Everything's fine with me, but there are things you need to know about your financial situation. Things Trevor hasn't told you. What things? Dad, you're scaring me. Not over text. In person, Saturday afternoon. I'll make lunch. Just come alone. Saturday arrived cold and clear. May in Montana, but the mornings still felt like winter. Jennifer's car appeared around noon, dust trailing behind on the dirt driveway. She emerged looking worried, tense, wearing a jacket too light for the temperature. I hugged her on the porch. She felt small in my arms. We started with coffee and small talk about her drive, the weather, her students. But the folder on the table kept drawing her eyes like a magnet. Finally, I took a breath. Set down my coffee mug. Honey, there are things about your financial situation that Trevor hasn't told you. Serious things that affect your house, your credit, your future. She laughed nervously, the sound too high. What? Did he forget to pay a credit card bill or something? I slid the HELOC documents across the table. 7 months ago, Trevor took out a home equity line of credit for $42,000 against your house. Without telling you, her face drained of color. That's not possible. We'd both have to sign for something like that. That's how mortgages work. In Colorado, under certain circumstances, one spouse can secure a HELOC if the title is structured correctly. I pointed to the signature line. Here's his signature. Where's yours? She examined the papers, hands beginning to shake. The pages rustled. I never signed this. I've never even seen this paperwork before. $42,000. Where did the money go? Best guess? Covering some of Gerald's gambling debts. Remember you told me Gerald lost $53,000 in online poker? Her voice was barely a whisper. He used our house as collateral without telling me, without even asking. Yes. And when that wasn't enough, when the bear incident at the cabin failed to give him access to liquidate my property, he started the smear campaign, making me look incompetent so no one would believe me when I tried to protect you from what he was doing. Tears formed in her eyes but didn't fall yet. There's more, I said quietly. A lot more. I showed Jennifer everything, each piece laid out in order across the kitchen table. The medical evaluation from Dr. Lin proving my competency. 3 pages of professional assessment stating clearly I was mentally sound, capable of managing my own affairs. The Adult Protective Services complaint. Trevor had filed claiming I was a danger to myself. False allegations about confusion, memory loss, inability to care for my basic needs. All lies, all documented. The public records showing Gerald and Diana had used my cabin address to fraudulently claim Montana residency for benefits they weren't entitled to. Medicaid, food assistance, programs designed for Montana residents. They'd been collecting for 4 months while living in Denver. Each piece of evidence carefully presented, each lie documented with dates, amounts, specific details. She listened. Initially defensive, then doubtful, finally devastated. When I showed her the federal mail fraud investigation Sheffield had helped me report to postal inspectors, she broke down completely. How long have you known? Her voice was raw, damaged. About all of this? Pieces since May, everything since mid-July, months. She looked at me with hurt and anger mixing together. You've known for months and didn't tell me. If I had told you in May with no proof, just suspicions and documents, would you have believed me? Or would Trevor have convinced you I was paranoid? Exactly what he was already telling everyone. She went quiet. She knew I was right. I refilled her coffee mug, let her process for a few minutes. Outside the window, clouds moved across the mountains. You have a decision to make, honey, and you need to make it soon. What decision? Her voice was flat now, exhausted. Stay with Trevor or leave him. Protect yourself legally or go down with him. I won't make that choice for you. How can I possibly decide that right now? This is too much. It's because federal agents are going to arrest Gerald and Diana within 2 weeks for benefits fraud. When that happens, everything becomes public. Trevor will be questioned about his knowledge. Your marriage will be scrutinized. Your finances will be investigated. She put her face in her hands. This is too much. I can't process this. If you leave Trevor, file for divorce, protect yourself legally. I'll help you rebuild. I'll help you find a place near here if you want, help with down payment, whatever you need. But if you stay with him, I can't protect you from what's coming. You're asking me to leave my husband. I'm asking you to look at the evidence and make a decision based on facts, not loyalty to someone who's been lying to you for months. She gathered her things hours later, exhausted, overwhelmed. I walked her to her car with a folder of document copies. Everything she needed to make an informed decision. Before getting in, she turned to face me. I need time to think, to figure out what this means. You have 2 weeks. After that, everything moves forward whether you're ready or not, with you or without you. 10 days later, federal agents arrested Gerald and Diana at their motel in Denver. Benefits fraud, mail fraud, using a false address to claim Montana residency and receive federal and state benefits totaling over $18,000 across 4 months. Jennifer filed for divorce 3 days after that. Clean break, no reconciliation attempts. Trevor's world collapsed quickly after the divorce filing. The proceedings revealed the hidden HELOC. Jennifer's attorney subpoenaed financial records. Everything came out. His mortgage went into default when he couldn't make payments alone. He moved to a studio apartment with whatever fit in his car. Lost his management position when the scandal became known at work. Gerald and Diana were sentenced to 3 years probation, community service, and $52,000 in restitution and fines combined. The probation terms prohibited them from leaving Colorado without permission. By October, Jennifer had relocated to Kalispell. I helped with the down payment on a small house 10 minutes from my cabin. 2 bedrooms, fenced yard, quiet street. She landed a 4th grade teaching position at Flathead Elementary starting in January. We established Sunday dinners together, alternating between her place and mine. Sometimes she cooked, sometimes I did, sometimes we just ordered pizza and didn't worry about it. One evening in late October, we sat on my porch watching 3 grizzly bears graze in the clearing. The sun painted the mountains gold and orange and deep purple. The temperature was dropping, but neither of us wanted to go inside yet. Thank you, Dad, Jennifer said quietly, for fighting for me, even when I didn't understand what you were doing. Even when I was angry at you. You're my daughter. I'll always fight for you when it matters. She was quiet for a moment. Look at that big bear. He's magnificent. That's my favorite. I see him almost every evening around this time. She smiled. A real smile this time, not forced. This feels like home now. It is home, for both of us. The hawk I'd seen that first day circled overhead, riding thermals in the cooling air. Jennifer reached over and squeezed my hand. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. We sat there until the sun disappeared behind the mountains and the bears moved back into the forest, and the only sound was wind through pine trees and that creek running over rocks. Peace. Real peace. The kind you can't buy or negotiate or compromise your way into. The kind you protect. If you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated because of your age, your quiet nature, or the way you choose to live your life, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to remind someone that respect isn't something they get to decide whether you deserve? That boundaries aren't negotiable just because someone needs something from you? Sometimes, the best lesson you can teach someone is letting them face the natural consequences of their own decisions. Sometimes people need to learn that taking advantage of someone's patience isn't the same as having permission. And sometimes, the most powerful people in the room are the ones who don't need to announce it. Until next time, remember, quiet doesn't mean weak. It just means selective.